Welcome everyone to First Fridays at 5. I'm happy to see both new faces and returning faces, just to returning people to come join us. So today we're going to be talking about the workplace classroom, effective training methods for employees. I am Ruth Ann. I've been a member of STC for I think about a year now, and member of IDL for about as long, and so it's just been really great to learn from these people, and yeah, I'm excited to share it with you guys. So first, I'm just going to tell you about some exciting things happening in the IDL and SIG and STC in general. So we do have some new member meetups happening April 11th and April 13th. Those are some opportunities for you people to learn about STC, what we have to offer, and how you can get the most out of your membership. STC is having a webinar called Transitioning to TechCom, past or present. The knowledge exchange is happening on April 25th. That's just an opportunity to hear from a panel of people talking about a topic, and yeah, it's often really interesting. April 27th at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time is when us IDL SIG leadership is meeting for our team meeting, but it's open to all members of the SIG. Our next First Fridays at 5 is happening May 6th at 5 p.m. Eastern. And if you're interested in contributing articles to our newsletter, those will be due Thursday, June 16th. So today's topic is workplace training methods. I'm going to be sharing some things, but feel free to also provide some opportunities for you guys to definitely give examples. And if you want to jump in and interrupt, that kind of makes it more interesting as well. So let's get started. So yeah, I think it's safe to say that effective training methods are a worthwhile investment for employers and employees. They are an investment since they require you to companies to set aside time for employees just to be learning how to do their job, or they're not necessarily putting out putting out goods and services, but instead like learning how to do their job well. Some benefits that I see are that there's some baseline benefits, like they provide skills and knowledge, allow employees to improve and find out best practices for safety. There's some higher level perks, like training has the potential to influence attitudes, productivity, and the quality of goods and services that they contribute. And employees also can benefit just by when they feel more confident doing their jobs, and if they know that their company cares about them. So for example, if they're trained in how to deal with aggressive people working in customer service are trained how to deal with aggressive customers, like their company knows that they care about them. I'll give a bit about my background. I currently work in retail as a cashier, and I had a pretty good training experience where like I was allowed to have ask somebody to supervise me as long as I felt like I needed supervision while I was learning how to do the job. And I could still, even when I was like transitioning to being independent, I knew that I could still ask for help whenever I needed it from supervisors or coworkers. And I think that it's quite different from someone that I was working with this week who said that she used to be in my position, and it was not a good experience for her because she received hardly any guidance and supervision while she was in the training phase of it. And so even now, when she was just filling in as my supervisor, she didn't feel confident or in doing the job, just because even though other people think she is good enough at doing the job, she just didn't have that good background to do the job confidently. So yeah, I think that training programs can cover many of an organization's needs. There's compliance training, so things like safety making sure that employees know how to do their job as per government regulations. There's training specific to a product. So learning about a product so that employees know how to sell it and how to recommend how to sell a product or sell a service as well. There's technical skills, so just learning how to do their job right, and soft skills as well. So things like employees could be trained in things like ethics and conflict resolution and time management. Do you folks have any examples of training that you've received or training that you've had to give, kind of so that I know who I'm talking to and what backgrounds we cover?
So I'll go first. So I'm actually learning. I just started a new job in October. And so I'm used to being on the trainer end, and now I'm on the trainee end, and I am not enjoying it. I like better being on the trainer end. And one of the things, so I'm working for a bank, and so there's all this compliance training with the government things, and that training tends to be not in-house. The company tends to buy that. But anyway, so I'm in the passenger seat and I'm uncomfortable with it. So that's where I am today, training wise. Mm-hmm. And I feel better just having talked about it. Thanks for the therapy, guys.
Well, you're a great trainer, Vicki. So that's I hope you can return to doing what you know how to do best very soon. Anyone else?
Hi, I'll just jump in quick because I've been lurking. I volunteered at SDC. It's been about 3 years I know about the organization. I've joined, I'm lurking. This is my second. First Friday is at 5 because of my schedule, and my background is instructional design. So I'm looking for a transition, and I've done all sorts of training, the stuff like soft skills, technical skills, or the just-in-time training. Like, everybody's got to get over their bias. Take this 90-minute training and we're all okay. So that's where I'm coming from. Thank you for having me.
I don't know if it's helpful, but so I'm not a technical writer yet. I just hope to be. I'm a librarian. I teach and I do what I think is maybe something like technical writing. But I'm a manager too. And I've hired 6 librarians, I think. And so I've done a lot of training of new librarians, lots of checklists, lots of meetings with other people in the library.
I guess training is not always about like onboarding. If that's your experience, that it's like training people new to an organization, definitely it happens. But sometimes, like say for a group of accountants, they might receive a new program where they might receive a new accounting software where they just have to be trained in how to use it properly. And so yeah, definitely training is definitely kind of an ongoing process, and it kind of keeps us like interested in our job. From my experience, it keeps us interested in our job, so we have to we're constantly updating our skills, and so I kind of like that as a benefit of training, definitely.
Speaking as someone who's got a very long career as a technical trainer, technical writer, and instructional designer, I put this in the chat, but I'm going to say it anyway. And that is that I think every trainer needs to be sat in the classroom once a year as a reminder what it's like to be a trainee, especially when it's material that they don't know. Because as a trainer who has taught some topics to death, and I actually had to write in some of my manuals, insert joke here, as a reminder that this is either dry or boring, or I've taught it too many times. You do have to be aware of how your audience is receiving it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that gets lost over time. Sometimes.
Totally. I think that's a very common problem with training programs. just that yeah, the trainers don't often sit in the trainees' shoes, and they don't know what's going to be needed to be said and what's going to be like not, yeah, what needs to be covered in a program and what is not so important. So yeah, awesome. And just how to teach to make it accessible.
And I think Jen is right about that, especially in the kind of training where it's more of a show. You know, if you don't have the luxury of having everyone work along with you so that they can do the things with you, because a lot of times the company or the whoever, sponsoring the training will not have budget for lots of time for hands-on and that kind of stuff. So when I'm just watching somebody, they really need to be conscious that I don't know what they're doing. You know, something that, especially like screen movements, if I'm watching them do something on a screen, my eyes don't know where they know where their mouse is going, right? They know what they're going to type, but I don't yet. And so it'll take me a while to track. And if they just go zip, 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 then I'm going to get a whole lot less out of it than they intend. I mean, because they're not, I think all of our trainers have the best intentions, and they genuinely, I think, like people and want to help us learn. They're not trying to torture us with, you know, I can do this faster than you can kind of stuff. That's a good point.
Do you all remember when Windows kind of first came out with the mouse and people had the cursor trail on it? So they move the mouse, you can see all these arrows moving it across the screen. I actually went back for some of the training that I did virtually and turned that on so that people who had latency issues maybe they wouldn't see me zip across the screen. I tried to go slow, but they could see the trail to see the arc of, okay, so she started there and now she's going over here. And, you know, we just have to remind ourselves that how we train is going to vary based on how people are set up, right? Taking a virtual class when you're sitting in a corporate environment where they paid for, you know, the giant T1 or what is it now, T5 lines, you know, with this incredible, you know, streaming experience is very different than somebody taking that same virtual course at home when they're on not quite dial-up, but probably the lowest available speed that they can afford.
Yeah, totally.
No.
Yeah, if no one else. Okay. I'll give it, unless anybody else wants to speak up. Jen is kind of hinting at what I was talking about next, which is think about your organization's needs or individual needs. So I'm just gonna. So yeah, as technical writers, we often think about just knowing your audience, what your audience needs. So we find it's just important to find out what's needed for effective training. There's like 3 levels of this. So first, there's the organizational level. So when looking at the whole company, which department needs training? So which department needs to, when you think about what problems your company is having, like which departments could benefit from training. And there's at the operational level, like what training could employees use. So you could usually do a task analysis to look at what they could benefit from. And then at the individual level, you could look at how employees are performing and what training programs would fill their needs. Okay, so further to that, we just kind of, when we're thinking about when we're finding out what's needed, there's a few steps we can take. So we determine we decide what goals we want for training employees. So we think about, like, when we think about what roadblocks or what problems we're having with an organization, just think about where we would rather the organization be in terms of what the employees are trained to do. with that in mind, we can identify the problem areas. So specifically what's holding the team back from doing as well as they want to. And so as opposed to problem areas, we can decide on desired behaviors. So where would some specific ways of what we would want to see, and once we know what a general idea of what we would want to, what kind of behaviors we'd want to see, we could set a timeline and priorities for training so that we're not trying to do everything at once. We're just thinking about what things are most urgent and what things can wait a bit. And so from there, we can kind of decide on what's the best training methods, whether it's online video training or in classroom training, or a blend of both. So when I talk about best training methods, does anyone want to talk about some examples of how they've been trained before and things? I can go. So in my organization, I first received a lot of virtual training. So it involved sitting in front of a computer and just learning things about how to prevent loss as a cashier, and how to help customers with our loyalty card programs. And then when I had finished my video training, I did some on-the-job training. So it was just on-the-job training, so just being supervised in how we help customers, and just kind of taught about what I can do in how it was less formal training. On the job training was much less formal, just being taught how to handle different situations. And so yeah, just kind of got the whole picture of how I could work at my job. So anyone else have some examples?
Always. So I was thinking about the compliance training that I have to do, because I'm now working at a bank, and we're working toward basically keeping the bank safe and the customer safe, like you were saying, Ruth Ann, to prevent loss, right? But the training is so dry, and also the government regulations are so what shall I say, just vast. There's just a lot of them, and they're kind of complicated. And so what I see my coworkers doing, and what I ended up doing too, was basically all I wanted to do was pass the test, because you have to show that you can pass the test once a year, because it's compliance training, right? And I know that's not my company's goal, that I should pass a test. My company's goal is that I keep the bank and the customers safe from things like fraud. And one of our trainings was about how to spot if an older person is being scammed by their younger relatives, for their money. But anyway, those are all good goals, is to keep grandma safe, right? Or grandpa safe. But that wasn't what we were learning. We were just basically learning how to pass the test and get on with it, and I don't know, as long as we're training to the metric, our desired behavior is not to pass the test, but yet that's what we're all working for. So thanks for listening to me. You're good therapists. I feel better.
I worked in a bank for 14 years, and we had the same type of compliance types ones. And some of the online learning, the questions were so vague that the entire branch got together to try and figure out what the answer was, so to see if we could pass the test. Because that was like, I had some where it was 6 months of one-on-one personal training. And then we had some where you're all online and everybody's trying to figure out what the answer is, because we can't tell from the questions. And then we had others where it's like, here you go, here's your job, figure out how to do it. Like the training was just all over the place on that one.
And that's where I would say that whoever developed that training material didn't really know what they were doing, or didn't know the problem that they were truly trying to solve for. Because if you can't make it interactive in some way, shape, or form, that's what you end up with, is people who are trying to learn just enough to pass the test and move on.
Mhm. Yeah, the other problem.
Yeah. Okay, sorry.
Oh, sorry, did I cut you off?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, and like the other problem with like, that just trying to pass the test is like it's not always applicable to the actual job. Like it's not like employees probably, when employees are starting out a job, they kind of just want to be able to know how to handle certain situations in their job, and they want it to actually help them do their jobs better. And so it's yeah, like it doesn't, if it's just, you're just doing it to pass the test and it's not actually going to help you in your job, like it's probably not very effective training for her.
Nope.
Okay. Well, one framework of how experts think of this training concept is the OSF ratio. So there are 3 types of on-the-job training, which are on the job, social, and formal. So I'm just going to talk about them in the opposite order. So formal training would be when you're this very structured classes, courses, and other programs like that you know what you're getting every time, that it's very controlled and just it's very controlled and static. And yeah, social learning is more about coaching and mentoring, any way that you learn directly just from talking to other people. And on the job, it's more the most informal, and probably the most informal and informal and uncontrolled. You don't know what kind of experience you're going to gain. You don't know what you're going to learn or how you're going to learn things. And maybe like if in my so I'll just give an example for my own job, like learning as a cashier, or just like learn how to do my job differently than other people in my position. So it's commonly thought that people learn how to do their jobs based on a 70-20-10 rule. So they learn 70% on the job, 20% through other people, and only 10% from formal training. But even though that formal training is said to only contribute to 10% of somebody's learning, it's very experts will say that it is very important, because it shapes what will be happening in the other aspects of training and other aspects of an employee's experience with the company. So it'll shape how they do their job, and it will shape what they talk about in conversations. Like if they aren't taught how to proper ethics training, for example, maybe all the employees will be engaging in sketchy behavior. And so that's formal training. It can be still very important. And the other piece of this ratio is that it's highly debated how much actually comes from it's hard to put a number on how much you learn from on the job versus social learning versus training. Some of it, it's very hard. So it's kind of just I don't know, very subjective, and just one way of thinking about how we teach and how we learn to do our jobs. So yeah, thank you for listening today. We can just I guess we can just spread the rest of the time just chatting about any other thoughts about this. So I'll stop.
I have some things to share. I have a pretty large team, and making sure that they're all trained is a challenge. And so our philosophy on my team is that we share the ownership of onboarding and training all of the members of our team. And so while we have the more formal packaged training available, we have our workflows and we have our procedures and work instructions and all of that people can access. We also have our one-on-one time where if someone new comes on the team, I'll set up a spreadsheet and I'll list a bunch of topics and people will pick one and they'll set up a meeting with the new person and they'll have that one-on-one time. That's also supported by kind of a mentoring, but it's very informal mentoring relationship where we'll have a lead writer and we'll have a support writer on a project. And so, you know, you learn by watching, by doing, by immersing yourself, but you don't have that, you know, unnerving responsibility of taking something on completely new, that there's someone right there who can show you the ropes and help you to get through it. But then also surrounding you is a very supportive team who can answer your questions. And I have a fantastic team. They're just so collaborative and willing to help one another, and it makes it work. If they were not of a mind to do that, that they wanted to keep their skills and expertise to themselves, it would fall apart. So I think that works really well, that everybody is invested in enabling everybody else to succeed in their job. And I think apart from that, no amount of training is really going to get you where you want to go.
Bobby, I love that idea of putting topics into a spreadsheet and allowing people to sign up. That's just so efficient. I've tried to in my training of new staff, I've sort of created categories of tasks that new librarians need to learn about, and I've picked a person. Well, you're really good at working at the research desk, or you're really good at teaching, and so would you talk with a new staff member about working at the research desk or teaching? And I feel like that's nice because it gives the senior staff member some recognition and some sense of accomplishment, but it also takes a little bit of time. And somehow I like the self-service idea of creating a list in a spreadsheet and inviting people to take the initiative and sign up.
Yeah, and it's really cool in the way that people they recognize their expertise and where they're lacking and where they might defer to someone else on the team to cover certain topics. But what's also really wonderful is that people who've been on the team for just a short time, they can select some of those topics and share with people what they know, or at least share some of their struggles. And it's really stunning to me how well it's working. And I'm sure there are flaws that I don't see, not because I choose not to see them, but I'm sure there are weaknesses in there. But for the most part, it works really well, and it relieves an enormous burden on me to do a lot of the training. I felt like I had to do a lot of it initially. I don't anymore. And it's, I can do other things. I can be strategic. I can move us forward as a team, which is, something that I should be focusing on anyway as a manager.
But I was thinking about how good that is for getting feedback, because training and learning just, you get that reinforcement from an actual human if you're sort of partnered with another human, and also the mentor is getting feedback, right? And they're getting a chance to show off their superpowers, which I always love.
I like it from the perspective that it lets everybody have a little more agency in their career path, right? And that, among other things, builds a level of engagement that you can't put a price on. You can't force that to happen. I know that as managers, we want to force it. Doesn't work that way.
Yeah, totally. It's way better to have people who are engaged in their jobs rather than, people who are just coming because it's a job. Like, you'd rather have people who want to be there, people who are excited to, I don't, you know, ideally like excited to work or at least able to do their jobs. And
I mean, I had this conversation with a colleague earlier this week. I do firmly believe that there are times in our career where we show up to work, we do the job, we go home. Like we're kind of on cruise control because other life events, right? Like, you know, perfect example, when my father-in-law got really, really sick. It's like, okay, I need my job to be on cruise control so I can focus on helping him with this. So there are always going to be times where you've got employees or team members or colleagues or whoever around you who is clearly in that sort of what I call a cruise control mode. But then there are other times where you want people to truly engage. And for those who are willing to drive their own career bus, you know, that gives them the ability to get behind the wheel. That's my philosophy right there for you.
As long as we're mics and cameras on, Jen, do you want to talk a little bit about the book that you're recommending, that Millennials Goldfish and Other Training Misconceptions?
Yeah, funny, I went to this guy's talk. So I'm a returning member to STC. It's been a number of years, but I'm also a member of the ATD, the Association for Talent Development, and I go to their conferences. I sit on the local chapter board a lot. And as you were talking about the 70-20-10, I was remembering this talk that I had listened to a while ago, and I ended up buying the book. I know it's backwards, but it's called Millennials Goldfish and Other Training Misconceptions, Debunking Learning Myths and Superstitions. And it talks about the 70-20-10 and how there's not a lot of empirical data behind it, only because no one's actually studied it. So every time I hear it, it's like, you know, I feel like if somebody wanted to make a name for themselves as an instructional designer or in the field of talent development, learning and development, learning education, whatever you want to call yourselves, because I really don't care. It's all about learning in my book. I feel like that would be the perfect paper to build a study around, and then boom, you're in, right? Like somebody who's working on a PhD program, I got the perfect dissertation for you. And it is interesting because people do talk about what they've learned. We're sitting here talking about what, and I'm going to mangle your name, Vicky?
Oh, Vicky.
Vicky, okay. I mangle names with incredible regularity, including my own, I might add, which should seem ridiculous, and it is, but I do it anyway. Talking about what you did or didn't learn because you were turned off by the training. You know, you're having a conversation about it with a bunch of colleagues. You are talking about that training, and that does happen with a lot of regularity, especially if you put an entire team through the training. They're naturally going to start talking about it. So there is a social component. We know that. Just no one's ever done a study on it to see what percentage is that actually. And I say that because once upon a time, I used to work for PricewaterhouseCoopers, and they did this whole video series on basically how not to be a bad employee by being a bad employee. And they used people from the firm, and they wrote, they were all playing parts, and it was like one guy walks down the hall and he smacks a woman on the ass on the way by, and I'm like, you filmed that? And that was the point. And let me tell you something, we brought down the servers every Thursday at noon when the next video launched. And you know what? It was the only thing people talked about for the next 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there needs to be some study around that because we proved for a month and a half that people do in fact talk a lot about some of the training that they go to, and that was required training. You had to take it. But the second that video dropped, everybody jumped into it immediately, and we brought the servers to its knees. And then they had to schedule specific rollouts for different teams. But it was hilarious because everyone was walking around going, did you see the new one? Did you see the new one? If you tell me that's not social, I gotta disagree.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I found that book entertaining because a lot of things that we think that we know about training, either there's not a lot of research backing it up, which is what he's pointing out, or that the research is accurate, or maybe not quite as accurate because the message has changed over the years. And so it was very entertaining. And it's one of those things where each topic is like 3 full pages. So you just can flip through it and read something different every day. But anyway, that's me.
But sexy material presented in a provocative way that will
Yes.
get eyeballs and that will get people. So do you think they were remembering what they were being taught or just that they were being taught?
I think it was both, because accounting is a very, very highly regulated industry. And every year I was required, because of the team that I was on, I had to help test out all of the annual compliance, independence, everything was rolled into this training. And it was a minimum of 90 minutes. And the higher up the hierarchy you were, the longer the training was, because it included more and more topics, right? So if you were a people manager, it was like 3 hours. If you were a partner level, it was 4.5 hours. And so we had to test these courses out. And I will tell you, the number of people who passed on the first try after we did that was about 25%, 30% higher than it had been the year before, when we didn't have any videos that came out ahead of time. That's a huge increase.
Yeah.
When you're talking about 60,000 employees.
Yeah, that's some results that would justify, getting a great camera and, costumes and makeup and all that stuff. Good script.
They did a phenomenal job. And I think what made it really entertaining, and I was entertained. I mean, these are like 3 to 5 minute video clips. I mean, it wasn't anything more than that. But I think what made it really entertaining is that they used employees that were fairly popular or fairly well known, completely fish out of water. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he did that, or I can't believe she did that, because I know this person, and it's like, they would never have done that. And it made it very, it was incredibly entertaining. It was incredibly entertaining. And I think, honestly, whoever came up with that idea, brilliant, just brilliant. Because that annual compliance training was boring as all get out. So, great results.
Yeah, and a good story.
Well, like, I have another story with that. When a group of us from Simon Fraser University, we were all in the same courses together. We all joined STC together, and we discovered Slack. And we created student group chats, and we all discussed, how did you do this assignment? Did you understand what this meant? And, do we have an assignment due? It was, we used Slack, and we got involved in Slack because we were discussing our learning, and it really helped actually, improve our learning and getting together, because we were able to just have this group discussion about our assignments and coursework.
Slack is technically a social media tool.
So that was higher than 20% social, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I said somebody needs to do a study. Know any PhD candidates?
I don't know if this is obvious or not, but like something I came across when I was doing research was for this presentation was like that when we talk about on-the-job training, it's not about stuff. It's about training that is specific to a company. It's not about things that is general to your occupation. So like a pilot will never be trained on the job how to be a pilot. They might just be trained before they get on the plane, how to use a certain software, or a better example is I already talked about accountants, but accountants will be trained accountants know the jargon and the concept of preparing taxes, but they might need to receive training on how to use a new software. And so it's just we talk about training, it's just things that are specific to the, I love that word, specific to the company. And so,
And I guess on that too, like when you think about it, how many of us, if we have a question, would ask one of our colleagues first before going and researching? Like, would you post it on SDC's Slack workspace or email somebody you know, or do you go research first?
So I'm a sort of multi-disciplined technical writer, and I always assume the same thing out of the person that's in my audience, right? When they're alone, right? Because if you're desperate enough to open the instructions, you have exhausted all the other kinds of learning, right? You know they're alone, because if anybody was in the office or available, you would have asked that person before you would read the instructions, or at least that's what I think. The other thing I know about that person is that they're some combination of scared and angry, right? Because if you wait, or well, I'm making generalizations, but most people that I know will not go to the instructions unless they're in some kind of trouble, right? And so people react to trouble differently. Some get angry, some get scared, some are some combination of the two. So we're alone and we're scared, angry, right? And so it's really important to me that, like, even when I'm doing like an instructional video, I try very, very hard to make even my voiceover is going to be warm and confident. And it's going to say, this isn't hard. We're going to do this together. And then next time you can do it all by yourself.
Reassurance of the trainer voice. I love it.
But, and that's a balance. That's a whole other talk. But Anita, that was what I was thinking of when you were talking, is to do the research. There's different kinds of research, right? And my preferred, and probably your preferred, is just ask somebody that knows, right?
I think it depends on the question. Like, if it's something that I know, if I called Carrie, she'd know. Or if I know somebody very specific who, I know she'll have the answer, I'll reach out. But if it's something where I'm not really sure who I would even ask, I'm going to try looking up the answer myself. And I do work some really wackadoo hours. It's not unusual for me to be at my desk at 4:30 in the morning or 11 o'clock at night. Not a lot of my colleagues are online that time of morning or evening. So sometimes it's more a matter of, well, there's no one else around to help me. Got to help myself.
Well, but that reinforces my you're alone, my thought that no matter what, you're alone. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty rare that I find something that I can't find the answer to on my own. But I will say this, here's a question for everybody here. How often do you reach out to a colleague for a gut check on something? I mean, isn't that kind of the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
So I do that quite frequently. Like, hey, am I crazy? Or, they'd love to just say, well, you're crazy, but here's the real answer.
Both could be true. Right.
Or my favorite answer is my husband, who says, you are crazy, just not about this. Thanks. We laugh a lot in this house.
All right, you guys, I'm going to stop the recording. And then where'd it go? There we go.